Why are you the best one to take on the presumptive Democrat nominee? Tell us how you can defeat him in November. Joe Gale.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to address the elephant in the room, and that's the fact that there's 9 candidates in the Republican primary for governor, and there's 2 that are not here this evening. And that's Jake the Snake Corman and Doug Mail-in Mastriano, both of which voted for Act 77, which is the unconstitutional mail-in voting legislation that gave Pennsylvania 50 days of no-excuse mail-in voting, which is the longest vote-by-mail period of time in the entire nation. And in my opinion, anyone that voted for that disastrous legislation should be disqualified from holding any office, let alone being promoted to a higher office. And they both voted for it, and they're afraid to face me on the debate stage because I'm the only candidate with a backbone that has the ability to speak the truth about the flaws and effectiveness and corruption of the Republican Party. And I do it relentlessly. And I have a groundswell of support in southeastern Pennsylvania, and I'm the only candidate that can defeat Josh Shapiro in the general election because I have the geographic advantage of coming from his home turf. We were both Montgomery County commissioners together. I'm now a 2-term county commissioner where the Republican Party establishment does everything possible to beat me, and I always win. And I attract a groundswell of independents that play a key factor in general elections. So political hacks that have analyzed my races can't figure out how a pro-life social conservative exists. I do, and I exist in the Philadelphia suburbs. I'm the only one that can beat Shapiro.
Thank you, Joe. So with reason-free mail-in ballots and a very active Pennsylvania Supreme Court, what would you do as governor to fix or change our elections to restore election integrity and the confidence of Pennsylvania voters? Joe Gale, election integrity.
Act 77 is the greatest scandal to ever come out of Harrisburg. It's worse than the midnight pay raise back in 2005. And the blood is on the hands of every single Republican state senator that voted for it. I don't know if the audience is aware, but the Democrats voted against it. And the Republicans in the legislature colluded with Governor Wolf to implement this deliberate act of sabotage, and it's the reason why Donald Trump is not president today. We all know he single-handed could have been reelected because of us, but we have bad Republicans in Harrisburg that cut a deal with Governor Wolf. And the deal was removal of straight-ticket voting in the general election for the exchange of 50 days of no-excuse mail-in voting. And it's absolutely unacceptable. And when I become governor-elect in November, I am going to start going public, I'm doing it now, that on day 1 after my inauguration, I want to immediately sign to repeal Act 77. In addition to that, we need election reform. We need to do away with mail-in voting. We need to restore traditional absentee ballots that require a valid excuse. We need to get rid of the drop boxes and everything else that sabotage this election. And we need to vote in person on Election Day. That's our civic duty as citizens. And I'm the reason why Act 77 has become a topic here in this debate.
You might have heard there's crime in Philadelphia. I don't know if you've caught that story or not. Rising lawlessness in the city of Philadelphia and cities across our Commonwealth as well. It affects everybody, all who live, work, or shop in the cities. How will you address the rising crime rate? Joe Gale, crime?
Just like all of you, I watched back in 2020 when Center City, Philadelphia looked like a third-world country war zone with all the looting and the arson, and they were getting away with it. No one was saying anything. And I was the first elected official, I believe, in the nation to speak out and speak the truth about Black Lives Matter. And I took a lot of heat for it. And I said radical left-wing hate groups like Black Lives Matter are perpetrators of domestic terror. And that's exactly the truth. And I had protesters come to my home 4 times, over 500 people in front of my home. I faced impeachment charges in the state legislature, and I wouldn't back down. I continue to back the blue, and I will do the same thing for your governor. We can't stand for lawlessness, and that's something that I will make sure we protect all the law-abiding citizens in Pennsylvania. And I've faced pressure, and I stand up to it. I had celebrities calling for me to resign from office because I spoke the truth. A 76ers basketball player, Meek Mill, who's a rapper, that also went to prison. It's a real pillar of the community. And I would not back down. And we need conservatives with a backbone to back the blue, and that's something I will definitely do as your next governor.
We're going to move on to our next question, which is energy. Just go buy an EV and deal with it. No, I'm kidding. We're all dealing with record high gas prices. That's the White House response. Just buy an EV, all right, and stop whining. Buy an electric vehicle. But actually, we're all dealing with this now. Record high gas prices at the pumps, sharp rises in home utility bills. Meanwhile, Pennsylvania has untapped underground energy resources in the Marcellus Shale. What is your plan to deal with rising energy costs while balancing responsibility toward the environment and making Pennsylvania a leader in energy?
Pennsylvania has the highest gas tax in the whole entire nation, 58 cents per gallon. And that tax was given to us with a Republican governor and a Republican majority in the state Senate and the state House. And that revenue collected was supposed to go towards fixing our roads. And I don't know about all of you, but I dodged a lot of potholes on my way to this forum tonight. In addition to that, we also have the highest tolled road in the world, and that's the Pennsylvania Turnpike. And $45 million of that a year goes to public transportation in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia instead of going onto the road that we drive on to maintain it. So it's really screwed up. We have a cost problem when it comes to fixing our roads and bridges, and we have to drive down the costs, and prevailing wage reform would do that. In addition to that, the United States of America should do everything possible to become energy independent, and frankly, we should not rely on foreign nations that hate us for energy. And Pennsylvania can lead the way to reach that goal through our natural gas industry. It's literally God-given, untapped potential right under our feet, and we should fully utilize it. It's reliable, it will create thousands of new jobs, and we can actually export it. That's how much of it we have. And as the next governor, I'll make sure we tap into our natural gas industry, drive down the cost of utility costs, and create all those new jobs that we desperately need here in Pennsylvania.
Politicians are sometimes derided as untrustworthy, as promising to do certain things only to later renege, often under pressure from major corporations or powerful special interest groups, or simply out of a lack of fundamental core values or worldview that guides their actions. What can you tell us about your core values? What are they, and what is their source? Gale, go ahead.
I initially sought office as Montgomery County Commissioner back in 2015 because the Montgomery County Republican Party endorsed a board member of Planned Parenthood. The Republican Party endorsed a board member of Planned Parenthood. And I was raised as a conservative, pro-life Catholic, and I was appalled that the Republican Party would do that. And I had the courage and conviction to run against the party establishment, unendorsed, to give people clear conservative pro-life choice, and I won that primary, and it was a tremendous upset. And ever since, I've been totally independent of the Republican Party establishment swamp, and I put my convictions first. My conservative values and principles are what shaped me as an individual, what shaped me as a county commissioner, and will shape me as the next governor of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I cater to no one except the people of Pennsylvania, and that's actually demonstrated in my campaign style. I do a series of meet and greets called A Cup of Joe, where I literally go into the living rooms of the homes across Pennsylvania and meet with the people directly for a coffee klatch. No one else does that. They spend their time catering to party bosses, establishment insiders, lobbyists, and donors that create them and can also break them. And I have the freedom and independence to exercise my conservative values and principles fiercely and hold Republicans accountable that let us down time and time again. And that's what my candidacy for governor is all about, a strong conservative that won't let you down.
Next question I will take, and this will start with you, Joe Gale. Today, biological males who identify as women are competing on high school and college women's sports teams here in Pennsylvania, winning championships, smashing records, and relegating women and girls to second place at best. University of Pennsylvania swimmer Leah, formerly William Thomas, is a case in point. This week, the Republican governors of Indiana and Utah vetoed bills to protect fairness in girls' sports there, while Iowa's Republican governor recently signed such a bill. Similar legislation has been introduced in the Pennsylvania legislature, which Governor Wolf opposes. What is your position on girls' sports, and what leadership will you bring to the governor's office?
It's very simple. If you're born as a biological male, you play men's sports. If you're born as a biological woman, you play women's sports. It's that simple. And what's really interesting is the last gubernatorial nominee here in Pennsylvania back in 2018, the Republican candidate, was a former state senator named Scott Wagner, who actually co-sponsored the transgender bathroom bill in Harrisburg. So you see the theme tonight. It's we are let down by bad Republicans in Harrisburg, and that's an example of it. And we need to restore common sense. And this issue, it's amazing that we're even discussing it. Men play men's sports. Women play women's sports. It's that simple, and I will support any legislation that makes sure that's the way it works here in Pennsylvania. No ifs, ands, and buts about it.
Thank you. The next question is about religious liberty. Last year, in a unanimous decision, the United States Supreme Court smacked down the city of Philadelphia for prohibiting Catholic social services from placing children in foster care and adoptions in accordance with their religious convictions. What would your administration do to protect the right of religious ministries and schools to serve the public consistent with their religious convictions? Joe Gale, same question.
The United States of America is a faith-based nation, and men and women shed blood to defend those freedoms, including the freedom of religion. And we must do everything possible as elected officials to protect those freedoms. And we can't stand for government and employers to mandate vaccinations, for example. Vaccinations, many of which are created with fetal cells. And there's a lot of individuals that have conservative values, pro-life values, that don't support that. And they shouldn't be forced to be vaccinated or otherwise lose their employment. And as governor, I would never do that to the citizens of Pennsylvania. I would protect your religious rights, liberties, and freedom. And you hear Josh Shapiro, he clearly has a vendetta against the Catholic Church. I'm a proud Catholic. And you heard about how he's gone after the Little Sisters of the Poor. What you don't hear is how, prior to being electing Attorney General, he was a partner in a law firm that represented the Archdiocese in a cover-up. So he filled his pockets on both sides of the issues, and he's let us down as Attorney General, and we cannot afford to have Josh Shapiro as the next governor of Pennsylvania, and I'm the only candidate on this stage that has the ability to defeat Josh Shapiro, and I'll make sure I protect all your religious liberties and from employers and government.
Thank you. The next question is the "'cause COVID" question. Last year at the ballot box, Pennsylvania voters approved a constitutional amendment limiting the governor's emergency powers in reaction to the pandemic mandates and shutdowns. Cities and municipalities and school districts, however, continue to impose mandates, like requiring vaccine passports or masks, even as the state reduced or eliminated restrictions. So, what, if anything, should the state government do to prevent or overrule the patchwork of mandates and guidelines and require uniformity in these circumstances? Joe Gale, if you have other government units that decide to put in those kind of mandates, what do you do?
No mandates. It's up to people. You have the individual responsibility and the freedom to decide what you do and what your family does. And be very skeptical and aware of the shell games that take place in Harrisburg. In the primary of 2021, we were all told to vote on the voter referendum of yes, yes, no, no, to limit the powers of the governor. And what good did that do us? In my county, Montgomery County, just up until a couple weeks ago, children were still forced to wear masks in school. So that voter referendum did absolutely nothing, because what you don't know is that the Republicans unanimously granted waivers under emergency declaration with the Secretary of Health, and it got us nowhere. So again, we're let down by a radical governor that's a tyrant and a dictator, and weak, pathetic Republicans in the state legislature. I'm all for personal freedom and responsibilities, and you may recall a story back in 2020 when my Democrat colleagues on the Board of Commissioners refused to release American flags to various veteran organizations for them to display at cemeteries because of COVID. They thought it'd be a big health scare. Outdoors, in the wide open air at a cemetery where people are already dead. So this entire process, you can't make these things up. There was no common sense. And the cure for the disease can't be worse than the disease itself. And these totalitarian lockdowns did far more greater harm than the virus itself, and it's very sad.
Next question is about the pro-life issue. And we got two Supreme Court decisions coming down this year. One that many people are aware of, which is a decision out of the Dobbs case of the U.S. Supreme Court that could overturn Roe versus Wade and return the abortion question back to the states. Wouldn't overturn abortion, it just would say that the states can decide. Also pending this year is a case before the Pennsylvania Supreme Court brought by Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry, asking the Pennsylvania Supreme Court to find a right to abortion in Pennsylvania's Constitution, basically an Uber Roe versus Wade at the state level, and to mandate taxpayer funding of abortion. So I'm going to make well, I don't want to make a presumption. If you're pro-life, tell me if you are, and then how would you use your power as governor to protect the right to life in Pennsylvania? We talk about signing bills and leadership. What would you bring to this issue? Joe Gale, pro-life issue question.
We have a moral obligation as human beings, as individuals seeking public office, to protect the innocent and vulnerable, and that's our unborn. And I pray that Roe versus Wade is overturned and those decisions go back to the states. And as your next governor, Pennsylvania will be a pro-life state. The innocent unborn will not be murdered. It'll stop once and for all. And I mentioned earlier, that's what started my whole quest in public life. When the Republican Party endorsed a board member of Planned Parenthood, I ran against them, and I won, and it was a tremendous pro-life victory. And you see legislation come in and out of Harrisburg. One of them is a heartbeat bill, where if a heartbeat's detected by an ultrasound, the baby cannot be aborted. Well, the Republicans in Harrisburg parade around and fundraise off the heartbeat bill, knowing that the pro-abortion Democrat that we have, that was a former escort of Planned Parenthood, Tom Wolf, will veto it. And as your next governor, I will push a strong pro-life agenda. And when the Republicans in the legislature have a strong pro-life governor at the governor's desk, I want that bill on my desk immediately. But I guarantee you there'll be some Republicans that once supported the heartbeat bill that start to drag their feet and resist it. Because now that can actually happen with a pro-life governor. It's too controversial and it's too extreme for them. And I will hold the Republicans accountable to protect the innocent unborn and make this a pro-life state once and for all.
We told the candidates tonight we were going to be free-flowing, and because of time, what we're going to do is we're going to give each candidate 45 seconds to give us their kind of closing thought of why they should get your vote in the Republican primary for governor. Sound good? Joe Gale.
If you notice, every time we give Democrats a majority in government, they ram down our throats radical liberalism, transgenderism, cancel culture. When we give Republicans a majority in government, for example, here in Pennsylvania, we're given the highest gas tax in the nation. And that's the former Republican governor, Tom Corbett, along with the Republican State House and State Senate. That was a legacy of the Corbett administration. And as your next governor, I will deliver the conservative agenda that Tom Corbett failed to deliver. That includes privatizing the liquor stores, pension reform for state employees, moving new hires from defined benefit to defined contribution plans, paycheck protection, eliminating public sector union dues that are automatically deducted out of government paychecks, property tax reform. For decades, you heard about the elimination of school property taxes. Nothing ever happens with it. I'll get it done. I'll get school choice done. And I'll defend the innocent unborn because I'll hold Republicans accountable to accomplish the conservative agenda that they always fail to deliver.
They did a great job tonight, didn't they? Give them a round of applause, everybody.